TCU added a portal running back. They said they were good at that position, but I guess they changed their mind. We'll talk about that next here on Locked On Horned Frogs. It's your team every day.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. I'm your host, Steven Simcox. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, also on your favorite podcast platform. We're free and available wherever it is you get your podcast. Hope you had a good Memorial Day weekend. Thank you to those and the families of those who made the ultimate sacrifice for our country. We appreciate you. And I wanted to start today. I'll do a more robust discussion about it in segment 3. But if you hadn't heard, we've got a lot of football news, a couple 2025 commits. TCU added a running back in the transfer portal from Arkansas. But TCU baseball season has come to an end, and it was a very abrupt end. Now, the Frogs struggled this year. They ended up 14-16 in Big 12 play. They went 2-2 in the Big 12 tournament. They were eliminated by Kansas in a game on Friday afternoon. Got down 9-0 in the first inning to KU. Ended up storming back and tying that ball game, but eventually fell 11-10 in 9 innings. And I guess it's not shocking. The shocking part was not because of their resume, because there were some holes in the resume. I mean, they went 13-0 to start the year, but some of those series didn't look as good at the end of the season as they did at the beginning of the season, just because the competition they were playing, they expected them to be really good teams. But UCLA struggled, USC struggled, all those things. However, all the prognosticators had them in and really didn't even have them on the bubble per se. D1 Baseball had them as a 3 seed, but they had them in the field. Baseball America had them in the field. The only place where I saw that they were potentially on the bubble is College Baseball Nation, which they did their final projection of the field at 64. And I think they had TCU at 58. And there were some politics involved with ADs on the committee that their schools got in. But the bottom line is, obviously I'm super disappointed because I want to see TCU play postseason baseball. And even though I didn't have a lot of faith in this team making a run, you get in the dance, you see what happens. You always want your season to go as long as possible. I totally get that. It's really tough for me, even though I feel like there were teams that got in that TCU should have been in over. It's tough for me to just like bang the table for this group. Not because I don't love the program and what they do, but I mean, they struggled. They were inconsistent. They really struggled against good competition. They won basically 50% of their Big 12 games with sweeps over Houston and Baylor. And there were very few moments when you got past that nice run at the beginning of the season where it felt like, all right, they're figuring this out. They look like a good, solid tournament team. They started the year in the top 5. That fizzled out after a nice start to the year. And so ultimately it's a huge bummer. I wish they were in. I think there's an argument that they should have been in. There's some other teams. But this feels like a mess around and find out type of situation where, I mean, it stinks. I know those guys put a lot of work into it and they want to keep playing, but man, just under 500 in Big 12 play, stuck around for a little while in the Big 12 tournament, but still ended up going 2-2. It just was not a great year. And they dealt with injuries, and there were some reasons why the disappointment was there, but ultimately just never really put it together and got left out of the field. So we'll talk about that more in segment 3, kind of where they go from here, the surprise factor of them just not making the tourney this year, and all that coming up later on in Locked On Horned Frogs. So I want to start today with some roster news. TCU added a running back in the transfer portal. We've talked about this offseason about how that was a position with a number of unproven players. Cam Cook's coming back for year 2. Didn't get a lot of opportunities as a true freshman. Trey Sanders dealt with injuries. Well, it seems to still be recovering from some pretty devastating injuries while he was at Alabama. A really cool, inspiring story, but hasn't showed the same explosiveness and burst since the car accident that happened there. Trent Battle has been a change of pace guy the last few years, but hasn't been really involved as far as a 3 down, kind of down to down running back. And then you got Nate Palmer and Jeremy Payne coming in. And recently, Sonny Dykes, in an interview with 365 Sports, said that going into spring practice, they were concerned about that position group. But after spring ball, they felt like they're pretty set. They think Cam Cook can be the next really good, productive running back for this offense. He said Trey Sanders is healthier than he's ever been, and that they got some other complementary pieces that are going to work. But kind of out of nowhere, they added Dominique Johnson from Arkansas. His career numbers at Arkansas, he rushed for, well, I guess last season he rushed for 167 yards on 31 carries. His best year was in 2021, 97 carries for 575 yards and 7 touchdowns. In 2022, 8 carries for 43 yards. Dealt with some injuries throughout his career. I think this is a smart signing. This is the type of player that you're most likely going to get in the second portal window, someone who has some experience, but maybe not an eye-popping stat line. As far as what type of running back he is, 6'1", he's listed at 250 pounds, so a big back, good goal line presence, as you see with those 7 touchdowns in 2021. And I was watching his 2021 highlights today. I mean, he looked really good. Like, the burst was there, the ability to get yards after contact. He wasn't somebody who went down when he got hit the first time, stayed on his feet, able to get through the first surge of defenders in goal line situations and score touchdowns. Now, through his career, he's been mainly a complimentary back. I believe the most yards he ever got in a game was in 2021 when he had 107 against Mississippi State on 17 carries. Also had a nice game that season against Texas, had a touchdown and 6 carries, but only for 44 yards. So even in his kind of breakout season, if you want to call it that, he was still kind of a change of pace type of guy, not necessarily getting 20 to 30 carries a game. But I think you saw a lot of good things from him in that highlight tape, including the ability to just get downhill and get yardage as a classic kind of single running back situation. And then they had him in the offset eye as a fullback at times. They would kind of motion him out in the H-back role where he could get some momentum and then get downhill and use that big frame of his to block. Didn't catch the ball in the backfield a lot, but you saw some good blitz pickups, especially in the Texas game. His, ability to come across the pocket, get a block on an edge defender. So that's really good. Now, I do wonder, he's technically a walk-on, but based on, reports and some information I've read, it seems like NIL is kind of taking care of his scholarship while he's here. But I do wonder what this means for Trey Sanders, because these are pretty similar running backs. I mean, similar career production in some ways, used in similar ways. So I don't know if Kendall is planning on using some more 2-back sets, maybe putting Dominique Johnson in some situations where he has to be a fullback, or kind of doing some inline blocking. But I think this is a savvy pickup. Now, I don't know what's changed in the last week or so since Sonny basically said publicly they're pretty set there at running back. If it was just this guy came available, obviously he knows Jimmy Smith well, who is the new Frogs running back coach after coming over from Arkansas this offseason. He spent time with Kendall Briles as well. So this offense, he should be able to pick it up really quickly and be able to just step in and rock and roll as soon as fall camp rolls around. But I think the biggest benefit to this is it gives you another option in short yard situations, which was an area where TCU struggled last year. Also gives you some options in the red zone game to use, just his size and his ability to get downhill. And I think when he was given opportunities when he was healthy in 2021, you saw somebody who could be at times like your lead back. So I think this is a smart pickup by TCU, and just good, if nothing else, it's good added depth in the running back room. But I think it could potentially lead to a lot more as far as just where his opportunities are and where he could fit in for the Frogs this upcoming season. So Dominique Johnson joining the running back room for TCU after spending a few years at Arkansas, and his best season was in 2021, but last year got some opportunities too once he was healthy. Big running back. I think he's somebody that's going to be effective in, blitz pickup situations, maybe being a lead blocker at times, and also just carrying the football, toting the rock, and being a force for the Frogs in the run game as well. So I feel like that's probably the end of the portal additions. And I think they've done a good job in this window of making smart decisions. James Brockermeyer, you go get somebody who can fit in on the offensive line. Hakeem Ajibalabe from Houston, an experienced defensive lineman. And then you go get Dominique Johnson, who gives you some options in the run game as well, which is an area where TCU is going to have to really improve this year because it just wasn't consistently there last season, even though Monty Bailey ended up having a really productive year and parlayed that into an NFL opportunity with Kansas City Chiefs. When we come back, we'll talk about the 2025 class. Frogs did some work on that front as well. It's Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. Let's talk about FanDuel. NBA conference finals still going on. Now the Celtics have punched their ticket for the NBA finals. I'm hoping the Mavericks can do the same tonight by sweeping the T-Wolves. You can go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on NBA playoff games, MLB games, NHL playoff games, whatever it is that you're interested in. FanDuel.com/lockedon, and you can guarantee that your first bet is a winning bet by going to that website, because as a first-time user, make one $5 bet and win or lose, they'll give you $150 in bonus bets. That's right. Win or lose, get $150 in bonus bets if you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel also has an app that is super easy to use. FanDuel, it's where the game starts. FanDuel.com/lockedon. Go there today. Official betting partner of the NBA and a proud sponsor of the Locked On Network. Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. So 2025 recruiting momentum has seemed to really pick up over the past few weeks with this class. And I would say, I feel like some people disagree with me, but I think this staff, which is kind of a new staff than we've had there were some changes, right? Andy Avalos coming in on defense. Ken Wilson is the linebackers coach. Jimmy Smith, now your running backs coach. I think they're kind of getting their mojo back. Now, they're not necessarily landing your typical 4- and 5-star blue chip players yet, but I believe they're getting really good players and they're evaluating well. And it just seems like there's more energy around this 25 class than there were at times with 2024. A couple additions over the weekend. The first is a legacy player, John Schobel, who is from Columbus, Texas. Columbus was one of the best teams in the state in 4A this year. They're actually ranked number 1 for most of the year. And then they got eliminated by Lorena, I think, in round 3 this past year. But John is the son of former TCU edge rusher Aaron Schobel, who had a great career at TCU, went on to play for the Buffalo Bills and other teams in the NFL. He is a 3-star edge player, edge rusher, 215 pounds, stands at 6'4", and is coming off a really good year at Columbus where he was super productive. Now he's listed as an edge on 247, and watching his huddle highlights, you see a lot of athleticism and ability to get sideline to sideline, but he's playing most of these snaps at what feels like or looks like your prototypical inside linebacker, middle linebacker position. So I don't know if the plan is to maybe put some more weight on him and transition him into a role where he's coming off the edge as a pass rusher, and then also has the versatility to sometimes go out in coverage, but really good instincts. I think the first thing that popped out to me when I was watching his highlights is he's just super physical. You can tell he is the son of an NFL player. He said he comes from a football family. He just gets it as far as, I'm going to come at you with bad intentions and make sure that, I get you to the ground. And that's the biggest thing that pops out to me when I just watch his tape and watch him play. Good speed, good play recognition, just an ability to read his keys and get downhill and make things happen. So another interesting And I guess TCU also has the flexibility with the evaluation process if they could keep him more in that middle linebacker, inside linebacker type of role. I said this recently when TCU got a commit from Dillon, Arkansas, who is a player at Denton Ryan, and kind of in similar mold to John, is primarily playing like an inside linebacker role right now, but you see the athleticism and the versatility in his tape as well. But Ken Wilson's doing a really good job on the trail. Like, it's obvious that they've made this a priority. They got a lot of linebackers. One part of it is they got a lot of linebackers graduating or that'll be leaving the program this upcoming year. Another part of it is there's just a huge emphasis now on speed, physicality, and versatility for this defense. And you can tell they want to get guys who can play multiple positions, who can hold their own in the run game and in the box, but can also, run down the field with skill players and playing coverage. But another interesting aspect of this is John Schobel's cousin, Adam, is a quarterback at Oklahoma State, 4-star QB, and he's currently committed to the Pokes. His dad also played at TCU. So, again, just big-time football family. Matt Schobel, Adam's dad, played at TCU as well as a tight end. Adam was committed to Baylor, then flipped to Oklahoma State. But I think there's just good connections to have there in case something happens with Ty Hawkins. Now, I feel like Ty Hawkins is the dude that TCU wants. They've got him committed right now, and you want to keep him in the fold. He's going to go compete at the Elite 11 finals in early June, and all indications are he's locked in with TCU, and he's got a really good relationship with Kendall Briles and Coach Dykes. But it's nice to have that kind of, connection if something does happen. But overall, I think this is another solid addition by TCU in this 2025 class. They also landed Anthony Deuce Williams from Shadow Creek in Pearland, Texas. He was committed to Texas for a while, decommitted a few months ago, and then is now locked in with the Frogs. He's an edge player, 6'3", 190 pounds, and another example of hyper-athletic, really explosive speed. Just watching his highlights, you see the ability to come after the quarterback and get downhill and make plays in the backfield, but also just that ability to go sideline to sideline. And even if you split him out in coverage, with that speed and athleticism, has the ability to go make plays and make things happen for your team. So another big-time athlete at that outside linebacker position. I think he's probably another one of those guys that projects as kind of that new stud linebacker that TCU is adding to their defense this year, where you have to rush the passer, but you also have to be able to be in coverage, be supportive in the run game. So a lot of different hats that you're wearing. But at that linebacker position, Sam Haley from Nashville. They've also got Keelan Abrams from DeSoto, who's more of an edge type. Dillon, Arkansas, along with Sam Haley, plays more of that inside linebacker spot. John Schobel, who's listed as an edge as a recruit, but is playing middle linebacker right now at Columbus. And then Anthony Williams, who is an edge player as well. So a big emphasis on the defensive side of the ball for this 2025 class. And so far, it feels like TCU is doing a really good job of identifying talent, finding guys who are going to be able to make this work. And, just a good job by Andy Avalos and Ken Wilson sort of hitting the ground running once they got on campus here in Fort Worth and finding players that make sense for this defense. I'm super excited to see this defense in action at Stanford. I know it's not going to be a finished product. There's going to be some growing pains, but I just want to see, what it looks like and what kind of dimensions that they can bring to the field and how they're going to frustrate offenses this upcoming season. When we come back, we'll finish up with some thoughts on TCU baseball season coming to an end. Locked On Horned Frogs, it's your team every day. Well, I got a couple texts on Memorial Day morning, Monday morning. A few people messaged me. They don't have to reveal their identities. I'm not going to, but if they want to, they can let it be known in the YouTube comments here. But I was hanging out with my kids, playing outside with them in the morning, and I got a few messages of, hey, TCU baseball, they're not going to be in the NCAA tournament. They got left out. And I was like, well, I thought the selection show was at 11, but thank you for letting me know. And essentially the team got notified early yesterday morning, and then it slowly kind of started to trickle out to where feel like a lot of people knew by the time the selection show rolled around that TCU was not going to be playing postseason baseball this year. It's surprising because, as I said at the top of the show, I mean, all the prognosticators had them in. Now, I saw Kirk Saarloos, there was a clip on Frogs today talking about the politics of it. There were 4 teams with 80s on the committee: Kansas State, Florida, Coastal Carolina, and Indiana. All 4 of those schools got in. TCU did not get in, and that was kind of the difference. Now, TCU shouldn't have been on the bubble with the talent they have on this roster, but they were, and that's kind of what it came down to. Is that pretty sorry? Yeah, it is. I think it is. But I hope that, and I'm sure that maybe yesterday wasn't the right time. I'm hopeful that this conversation will happen. And Kirk acknowledged this in the interview. He said, listen, we made this hard on ourselves. We did it ourselves. But, I mean, they went under 500 in Big 12 play. There were a lot of moments this year where they struggled. They struggled against good teams. The best team they beat in a series this year was, in conference play at least, was probably Kansas State. And that's the one that is a killer to me because, K-State had a better conference record. But, I mean, TCU won 3 out of 4 games against Kansas State. Like, it head-to-head seemed like they were clearly the better team. Florida also had a really disappointing year after a great start, but they're going to get a chance to continue their season, and TCU's not going to. Just a really tough year all around to go from preseason top 5 to not even making a regional. And frankly, it's just not something that should happen at TCU. Like, they should always be with the resources that are poured into that baseball program, the talent they have, they should always be in the field 64. And I'm not criticizing the selection committee for that. I'm criticizing the team for not having the year that was kind of up to their standards. And they know that. I mean, I'm not breaking news here. I feel for the guys. I feel for the guys who aren't going to be back because of graduation or because they're headed to the MLB draft. It's a really rough way for your season to end. Looking forward, I'm not sure what Anthony Silva's going to do. I mean, he was kind of like a consensus first-round pick going into the year. He had a tough season at the plate, but I'm sure he'll still be a really high prospect, so I would imagine he's probably moving on. Peyton Tole is moving on, who had just an incredible season, especially in the midst of what was happening in his personal life. Just amazing, focus and determination by him, and he turned into a true ace for the staff. The thing I'm concerned about is the lineup is an issue, and I don't know, or just the hitting was a big issue this year. I don't know the factors there, but they brought in Dave Long this offseason. Kirk Saarloos is a longtime pitching coach. Like, their inability to get quality starters, on Friday, Saturday, Sunday has been kind of a running theme, and it's at the point where you got to wonder, like, what the breakdown is. Because Cole Klecker really struggled this year. Luis Rodriguez, same thing. It was a revolving door. Braden Sloan had some good moments at the start of the year. They put him in the rotation, and things really broke down. Ben Abel got a start at the end of the season and looked good, and ultimately he had a good year, but it was kind of a roller coaster with him as well at times. The lack of consistency on the mound is something that they're going to have to address too. And you can do that in the portal, but you're going to have to reconstruct this roster a little bit and hope that some of these talented freshmen that showed some flashes can step into bigger roles next year. But a lot of soul searching going on there because, man, this season was supposed to be so promising. They came into the year with a lot of hype and expectations. And, I saw Kendall Rogers, who knows college baseball as well as anybody, say he thought TCU should have been in the field. So I get where they had an argument, but it's tough to get past just the kind of personal responsibility in it all with the drop series and just kind of a team that never seemed to live up to fully what they could do with the talent they had. But those are the breaks sometimes. And so an abrupt and disappointing end to the TCU baseball season. But we're still here. We're still pumping out content, doing shows. It's Locked On Horned Frogs. It's your team every day.